These are the new metal releases for July 10th, 2026. A big week covering everything from groove metal and techno death metal to hardcore, southern gothic rock, sleaze metal, and a new single from one of my most anticipated albums of the year. And that's the one I'm going to start with because it is the new single by Anthrax called The Edge of Perfection. The song starts kind of soft, but then it starts to sound like black metal. And it made me think of how Testament incorporated black metal into their sound last year. But once Joey starts singing, it sounds like Anthrax, you know you're getting Anthrax. So I think it's a really good song. The drumming is very intense. This is some of Charlie's best drumming and some of his heaviest drumming. Maybe some of the heaviest drumming I've ever heard from the band. But it's still an Anthrax song. When you listen to it, you know it's Anthrax. It's also memorable. It's catchy. And they take a few chances, and I think they made it work. If there's only one criticism, is they have those like whoa, whoa, whoa vocals a little bit, but they're like, it doesn't ruin the song. It just kind of carries the melody a little bit, but I'm looking forward to this new album, and this is a really great song. If I have to give it a score, I'll give it a 9 out of 10 because it's a really great song. I like it a lot, and that's all I'll say about this. Let me continue with the rest of the albums. Next is Wailin Storms with the Arsonist, out July 10th, Season of Mist. And this is a southern gothic rock band out of Durham, North Carolina, led by vocalist and guitarist Justin Storms, and this is their 5th album and their first for Season of Mist. Now, if you need a really quick reference point, Metal Injection described the band as what you get if Bauhaus, Killing Joke, and Black Sabbath had a child together, which is honestly a pretty accurate summary of the territory they're operating in. Fans of 16 Horsepower, Danzig, or Nick Cave should feel right at home here. The album was recorded in full analog by Matt Talbot of Hum, and that decision is pretty much audible throughout. It's raw, warm, deliberately imperfect, in a way that feels like a direct reaction against modern, overproduced music. Lyrical influences include David Lynch, Flannery O'Connor, and Cormac McCarthy, which tells you everything you need to know about the general atmosphere of dread and dark Americana running through the record. The cover art, a tiny house consumed by flames against a heavy shadow, was painted by Storms himself, inspired by Rene Magritte. Standout moments include Heart of Mine, which apparently evolves around the roadhouse from Twin Peaks via Rhodes, Oregon, and the closing track, It's All Dark Now Where Your Eyes Used to Be, which ends the album on a ghostly gothic romance note with a piano tolling like a death bell. Now, it was slow in places, and I won't pretend otherwise, but the gothic atmosphere is genuinely compelling, and I have a feeling it might be a grower. For now, the Arsonist gets 7.5 out of 10 from me. Next is Hammerfilosofi with Secundus Adventus, out July 10th on Asmos Productions. Hammerfilosofi are a black metal act drawing comparisons to Funeral Mist and Marduk, and this EP follows their recent release Sigum. The concept here is straightforward. 2 tracks from the album, My Blood is My Voice and A Dance Above the Abyss, completely reforged with new mixes, new masters, and fully relocated drums, courtesy of Dystopian at Dystopian Studios. The result is apparently darker, heavier, more triumphant than the original. But in my honest opinion, it's just 2 songs. I appreciate the effort they went into just remixing them and remaking them and all that. The black metal atmosphere is suitably intense. It's just 2 tracks. Doesn't really give me like a lot to go on, so I'm not going to give it any score. I think they're just 2 decent black metal songs. That's all I'll say about that one. Next is No Cure with It's Going to Get Dark, out July 10th on Sharp Tone Records. No Cure are a hardcore band out of Birmingham, Alabama, and they've been quietly building a serious reputation since emerging in 2022, sharing stages with the Akasha Strain, 200 Stab Wounds, and Chaotic Decapitation along the way. It's their 4th release and their most outward-looking record yet, turning the gaze away from the southeastern experience of their previous work and toward what they see as a world of gradual accelerating decline. Cheerful stuff, but delivered with absolute conviction. And the music backs that conviction up completely. It's brutal, punishing hardcore with serious extreme metal teeth, Think Jesus Peace, Nails, Full of Hell. But what impressed me the most was not that just the relentless pummeling from start to finish. There are these atmospheric moments woven throughout that give the record breathing room and make the heavy parts hit harder. By contrast, this kind of dynamic thinking elevates this above a lot of what gets labeled hardcore these days. There's also some guest appearances from Vincent Bennett of the Catch String and others, and that adds extra weight to an already crushing record, and I like it a lot. It's Going to Get Dark gets 8.5 out of 10 from me. Next is DevilDriver with Strike and Kill, out July 10th on Napalm Records. DevilDriver are a band that need very little introduction, groove metal veterans led by vocalist Des Fafara. Now on their 11th studio album, Strike and Kill follows their Dealing with Demons double album cycle, and by all accounts represents a serious return to form, doubling down on their signature elegance, thrash, heavy groove rather than chasing any modern trends. 13 tracks, just over 50 minutes, and critics are describing it as one of the most aggressive and revitalized records of the career. The lineup has been significantly reshuffled around Fafara. Founding bassist John Miller returns for the first time since 2011's Beast, which is a welcome development, and new guitarist Gabe Mangold from Enterprise Earth also pulled double duty, producing, mixing, and mastering the whole record. What I appreciate about Strike and Kill is the variety across the runtime. Isn't just 50 minutes of relentless pummeling, although there's plenty of that. And tracks like Ride or Die and the title track deliver that kind of crushing heaviness you expect. But there's also something like Summoning Shadows, which opens with acoustic guitars and melodic vocals before absolutely detonating. And those kinds of dynamic moments make the whole album breathe in a way, keeps you engaged from start to finish. This is a very well-rounded record. Strike and Kill gets an 8 out of 10 from me.
I never fucking die!
Next is The Plot and You with their self-titled album out July 10th on Fearless Records. Full disclosure, this is my first time spending time with The Plot and You, so I came in without any prior context. The release itself is technically a compilation rather than a traditional album. New material, it brings together tracks from 3 digital EPs released throughout 2024, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3 series, alongside a handful of standalone singles, including the more recent and notably aggressive You Get One. The whole thing spans 12 tracks across 40 minutes. This is also framed as conclusion of the band's multi-year volume series. The sound sets in post-metalcore territory, blending heavy breakdowns with alternative rock, electronic textures, and R&B influenced vocal hooks. A lot of songs follow a similar structural pattern, starting in aggressive heavy territory before opening up into more melodic and atmospheric spaces. And that structural split is honestly where my feelings in this one get complicated. When they're in heavy mode, I'm on board, I like it, the breakdowns hit, the aggression feels genuine, and tracks like You Get One deliver what I want from a band from this genre. But when they drift into the more polished pop influenced end of the spectrum, those songs don't do a lot for me personally. It just starts to feel less like metal and more like modern radio rock. So I have mixed feelings, so my final score will be 7 out of 10. Next is Ravaged by the Yeti with Snowbound Horror, out July 10th on Testimony Records. And yes, that is the band's name, and yes, the album is literally about a murderous Yeti stalking victims throughout a frozen winter landscape. Track titles include Death by Icicle, Tusk of the Yeti, and Vengeance in Fur. The band themselves describe it as Neanderthal metal, which is honestly the most accurate and endearing piece of self-description I've encountered in a while. Now, I don't mean to say it, but it's cheesy. It's very cheesy, but here's the thing. It's fun death metal, and I think that's the point. The project is led by Swedish death metal veteran Roger Johansson, who has an almost very large discography across bands like Paganizer and Ripspreader, and joined here by Michael Borders of Massacre on bass and John Roden on drums. The sound is somewhere between old school Swedish death metal and death and roll. There's mid-tempo grooves, buzzsaw riffs, guttural vocals, and the overall vibe reminds me a lot of 6 Feet Under, but very well executed and a lot better than anything they had been putting out these past couple albums. And the riffs. Now, nobody's trying to be technical. They're not complex, progressive, or sophisticated riffs. They're effective, they groove, and sometimes you just want to hear the same note played over and over again. Sometimes that's like the best metal. So, 11 tracks in 34 minutes, no filler, no pretension, just death metal that knows exactly what it wants to be and delivers it with a grin. Snowbound Horror gets 8.5 out of 10 from me. Next is Smoking Snakes with All Lights On, out July 10th on Frontiers Music SRL. Smoking Snakes are a Swedish sleaze metal band, and the mission statement here is pretty straightforward. Make a record that sounds like it could have come out in 1987 and not apologize a single second for it. Influences cited include Rat, Wasp, Skid Row, and early Judas Priest, and the band describes its aesthetic as Neon Nightmare of hard rock redemption. 12 tracks in roughly 35 minutes, split between hard rocking up-tempo numbers and power ballads, with big guitar hooks and the kind of production that puts the chorus front and center every single time. The album even opens with a mock 1980s late-night radio-to-broadcast intro, which sets the tone immediately. This is a band fully committed to that era, and they're channeling it and not doing it with any ironic distance. They mean it, and that sincerity actually counts for something. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was a fan of sleaze metal and glam metal back when I was like 17 years old and 18 years old, but I don't listen to it a lot these days. I appreciate what they're doing, but I think their goal was to faithfully recreate that classic hair metal sound, the big choruses, the swagger, power ballads, and then All Lights On genuinely accomplishes that. And they've done their homework, and the execution is solid. Not really my cup of tea, but I don't mind it. I thought it was okay, so my score will be 7.5 out of 10. Next is Iron Slaught with Metallic Torments, out July 10th on Gatesfell Records. Iron Slaught are a French heavy metal and speed metal band, and this is their second full length, and it arrives 11 years after their 2015 debut, Crusading Metal Mercenaries, which is quite the gap between records. The album is essentially the work of two core members, Iron Jeremy handling guitars, vocals, and songwriting, and Nick on bass, and programmed drums rounding out the lineup. 8 tracks, just under 45 minutes, built around dark themes, stories covering opposition, vengeance, witchcraft, and there are songs about medieval battles and pure devotion to metal. Now, I'd never heard this band before, and it was a pleasant surprise. What immediately grabbed me is how much stylistic ground they cover, and it never feels like unfocused or inconsistent. The core identity is traditional heavy metal, it's rooted, it's confident, but they're not afraid to take sharp turns in any direction. One moment they're pushing into thrash territory, the next they're veering into genuine death metal brutality, and then, without warning, they might pull back and do something more melodic, almost ballad-like, almost more like melodic death metal, and it all sounds cohesive, which is good. And that willingness to go from crushingly brutal straight into something melodic and atmospheric, they pull it off. That's something you don't find that much. So I thought this was a really good album, start to finish. A very welcome discovery. Metallic Torments get 8.5 out of 10 for me. Last band I have is Apogean with Waste Where Life Begins, out July 10th on the Artisan Era. Apogean are a technical death metal band out of Toronto, Canada, and it's their second album following their 2024 debut, Cyber-Restrictive. The band has expanded their sonic palette considerably on this one, moving beyond pure technical death metal to incorporate black and death metal influences, neo-folk elements, and atmospheric classical structures with guest artist Laura Bates, weaving violin arrangements and choral textures throughout. 8 tracks in roughly 33 minutes, built around philosophical and introspective lyrics, exploring self-reflection and the cyclical nature of life and death. Now, technical death metal is a genre I approach with some caution. The problem with some bands in this space is that they try to be too technical and too complex, and that's the entire point. But somewhere along the way, the actual songwriting gets lost, so everything kind of blurs together. Now, with this band, I didn't really find that. Because, yes, it's technical, there's time signature changes, but in the end, it's a very solid tech death album, so Where Waste Life Begins gets an 8 out of 10 from me. That's all for this episode. Check out last week's episode, should be appearing on the screen right now. Thanks for watching. Please like the video, helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews and rankings and metal documentaries and series and that kind of stuff. So I will see you in the next one.